board for making this possible and facilitating this. Bear in mind that this session will be recorded and later on shared publicly, so you will all receive a recording of this. Note that we will have a question and answer session at the end of this webinar, so feel free to enter your questions in our chat box on the right side. Okay. Now, as you all are aware, in this training session, we will give you an insight on how video comes in handy in the bid and proposal cycle, and how obviously it can boost our chances of delivering a successful bid. Our guest here is Kevin Ayers. He is the CEO of 7 Seconds to Win and a proposal management professional and coach with an impressive portfolio of clients. So I hereby invite him to join us and take the scene and the screen. Kevin, I think you're on mute.
Right.
Good.
Wait a sec. Yeah. There you are. It's not giving me the option to share after all.
I'll just stop sharing maybe. Okay, there you
go. Okay. Just firstly check that you can all see that. So you should hopefully see me and you should see my slides. Is that right?
Yes, that is correct.
Yes.
Okay. So thanks for having me. And I think it's a really interesting time to look at video and even using this webinar, right? So who'd have thought a few weeks ago that the whole world would be doing these all the time, and that video would suddenly be massive. You know, I mean, a video obviously in terms of watching TV has been pretty massive for decades, but using video as part of our everyday lives in terms of Zoom and Microsoft Teams and WhatsApp and all this stuff, it's suddenly become even more relevant, right? So I think this is a really, really good time to how do we use video to win bids and proposals. Now, this was put together before all this kind of crazy coronavirus kicked off, but I'll try and tailor this to how I think to what's happening now and how things might happen in the future. Okay, so before I kick off, what I'm going to do is play you a very short little video in a moment. But first, as has already been said, I'm Kevin Ayers. I'm CEO of 7 Seconds to Win. And the whole point of 7 Seconds to Win is really to help bring bid presentations, proposal presentations to life using video. So now I can't, we do that by creating videos that are customized to this bid, this proposal. Now, because I do a lot of these meetings, sadly, I can't go customizing my videos because it just wouldn't be cost effective to every meeting I attend. But it's just been good to start off with a little, very simple, because they're often very simple because of lack of time, very simple video which sort of explains our value proposition. But because this isn't a sales meeting, I've chopped off the salesy bit at the end. Okay, so this is just the kind of what problem are we trying to solve here a little bit. So let me just play that for you. Microsoft Teams is quite good at playing video, but bear in mind the whole internet is slowing down. So I'm going to risk playing this. It's about a minute and a half, but it may or may not work your end. So if it doesn't work your end, you can always go to my website and see the full version, but we'll give it a go. Okay, so just bear with me if it doesn't work very well.
When you're submitting a proposal or bid to a prospective client, it's vital that you get their attention quickly and that your message stands out from the crowd. A proposal or bid must have style and entertain first if the quality and substance of your solution is to shine through. In this age of social media, it's so important to communicate simply and visually. One of the best ways of doing this is with video.
A compelling video is one of the most powerful ways to capture your prospect's attention. It gives your power sponsor an easy way to influence decision makers within their organization, even when you're not there to tell the story, and in a way that clearly communicates the key benefits of your solution. It also allows you to keep control over the way your message is delivered and experienced. And it doesn't have to just be video. An animated video can communicate your solution clearly and in a way that can be more entertaining and engaging than video alone.
Animation works especially well when you're looking to communicate concepts and solutions that might otherwise be difficult to explain. It can also be useful when it's not possible to video members of your bid team due to time pressures or location constraints.
So it's just interesting. I haven't seen that video for a couple of weeks because of everything that's been going on. And so just a couple of phrases there that really resonate now, right? Well, location constraints. We're all totally if you're, I don't know how it is in Romania, but certainly in the UK, we're all location constrained. We're all working from home, right? So that's really interesting. And I think the other thing that really resonates now is when you're not there to tell the story. So often in a bid or proposal, you can be there physically in the room. Okay, and we're going to talk about when you can use this now to tell the story. So video becomes arguably even more important as both as a leave behind, or maybe instead of you going, depending on what the client are asking for, or to help you tell a story when you're not physically in the room. So let's look at what problem really are we trying to solve. So often people say something along the lines, they come to me and say something along the lines of, we need, our competitors are going in, frankly, with more sexy slides, a more sexy looking offering than we are. We're going in doing the same old. We need to be able to make it more sexy. Okay. Now, and they often, I wouldn't use those words particularly, but that's often what people say, something along those lines. Now, for me, it's really more serious than that. And there's a kind of good way of looking at this from a psychological point of view. Is what Daniel Priestley, best-selling business coach and author, calls the window of listening. Because the brutal truth is, you could have the best sales team, either when this is over, physically going to present or presenting online, you have the best sales team, but if they're not ready to listen to you, then it doesn't really matter, because they're just not ready. And so there's four things that you need to have to open this kind of window of listening, if you like, to have people listening. So one is to make sure it's the right time and place. And two is to have some kind of referral so that you have some credibility. Now, often for larger bids, hopefully you've got some kind of relationship already. So you're already sort of referred in often. You have a relationship. The right time and place, well, sometimes you can affect that, sometimes you can't. But by the time you're actually presenting, it better be the right time and place. It's too late to change it, right? So the other two things that you can massively affect are building rapport and quickly demonstrating relevance. Now, in the old world where we could physically go and present, and hopefully we'll get back to that as soon as possible, but for the moment, building rapport online is even harder because you can't shake somebody's hand. And depending on culture, maybe Eastern European culture, and certainly the further you move east and the further you move south in the world, physical contact for building rapport, shaking hands or kissing on the cheek, or hugging, or all these kind of physical. I'm British, we don't do physical very well, right? But in many cultures, physical touch is a really important part of building rapport. Can't do that at the moment. So how do you build that rapport? And a custom-made video that really talks about them is a very good way of building rapport. And in fact, that's how we even got into doing this. We weren't making these types of videos. I was doing other sorts of video production, live streaming and so on. I have been doing that for years. And somebody came to us and said, we want to make a video for a large bid. This was a big blue chip IT company, and they were bidding to a major car manufacturer. And we made them a video, animated video, and they came back and said, when we played the video, it changed the atmosphere in the room. It went from being, go on, sell to us, to being much more warm and jovial and much more interactive. Now, and that was in a physical room. And imagine how much harder now it is online in terms of building that rapport, because you have that separation. There's no sense of shared space on a call like this. It's much harder to build that rapport. I mean, now I'm even looking at my slide. I can't even see you. I can't see anyone except my slide. I'm just talking to a little round, camera. And so very hard to really engage with you. And even if I switch back, again, it's still not even there, and I think a lot of you don't even have your camera, so very, very hard to build rapport. And so anything you can do, either on an online meeting like this, or even if you've had to submit something, anything you can do to try and gain that kind of virtual rapport is going to be even more value than it was 2 months ago. And the other thing which hasn't changed, is quickly demonstrating relevance. Because the brutal truth is, you could be the third team presenting that day, either physically in a room or on a Zoom call or on a Microsoft Teams call like this. You could be the third team that morning presenting, and you're standing between them and lunch, the lunch break, and they're at home now, and they're, husband or wife is in the other room making lunch, and I've got to go play with the kids. Do I really have to sit through, it's even harder now. It's hard enough being in a physical room. Being on Zoom call after Zoom call somehow is kind of even more mentally tiring. I don't know why it should be, but I don't know about you, but I find it mentally tiring to be on these kind of calls for any length of time. So, if you're the third person in presenting, anything you can do to get their attention in the room and differentiate yourself from the two people that went before, you've got to get them back in the room. You've got to stop them thinking about lunch. You've got to stop them thinking about all the other stuff they've got to do and how they don't like being in this Zoom call thing anymore. You've got to get them in the room and focused on your value proposition. And video, again, it's a great way of getting attention, engaging emotion in a very small, quick package. So really, you're trying to differentiate from everyone else. So if you can do that using a customized video, there's a very good chance that no one else has bothered to do that. So already, if you show up and very quickly, right early on, you play a customized video that's about this deal, about them, you're already going to look like the red pea in this picture. And then if the story you've crafted is really good as well, not only is the medium differentiating as nobody else has bothered, the message is differentiated because you've told a really good story. You haven't gone in and said, we're amazing, we're this, we're that. You've talked about them. So it's the medium and the message is now very differentiated, and you're only 3 minutes into the presentation. You've done some little chit chat and so on, but then before we start, I'd like to play your video. You set the scene, and hopefully now that window of listening is really wide open because you've rapidly demonstrated the relevance and it's helped build rapport, and you've differentiated yourself from everybody else using the medium of customized video and the message of a really good story, not just a load of bullet points. Okay. So animated video is particularly good when you have concepts to explain. And let's face it, now physical video, at least for a while, is it's going to be very hard to go and film people. We might be able to do this sort of video at home, but going to film people is going to be tricky. At best, we're going to be able to do like I don't know if you saw online, the UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson. Even the Prime Minister is now filming himself because he's socially isolated on a smartphone, right? And that's got to be good enough. You can't even have somebody film him at the moment. So, physical video is going to be tricky. So, either stock video or animation is pretty much all you've got at the moment. But that's fine, because animation actually, to be honest, usually is a better option anyway for reasons we'll get into, and especially when you're explaining concepts, because you can use visual metaphors. As the video I showed right at the start, you often, and for any kind of large deal, even if what you're selling is relatively straightforward, if it's a large deal, there's usually some element of complexity or contractual complexity, or there's some element. And if it's a technology solution, then it may well be very complex. And so anything you can do, because often the person making the decision is a business person, not a technical person. So you might be talking to the technical person, but ultimately it's the business person that's going to sign off on this. So giving this technical person a nice, easy video, which they can share, which we'll talk about a bit more, they can share with the business person who's going to sign this off, is really powerful. I just want to do a quick, because I can't see anyone, I just want to do a quick tech check to make sure you can hear me and I'm still connected.
if you're looking for an answer, we can hear you and we can see the presentation quite well.
Brilliant.
Yes, yes.
I just don't want to get one of those phone calls where you're on the phone and you realise I did this earlier, where your phone has died and you've been talking for the last 5 minutes and no one's going to hear you. So I just want to do that every so often. So thank you. It's rather disconcerting, as I say, talking to a camera and not knowing whether people can even hear you. So thank you. So it also quickly, as I said, demonstrates that relevance. You get all the good stuff up front, and that's really important. Now that was important for physical meetings. So if the danger is people show up to your meeting late and then they've got to go and do something else early. Now, in some ways, with all these online meetings people are having, that is less so because, frankly, people have got less to do. But still, it may be that the technology cuts you short. Somebody's internet, the key person's internet goes down at just the wrong time when you get into the good bit. So by showing the video up front, you've laid out your stall, you've shared your key value proposition early, so that no matter what happens after that, when you're going down into the detail, at least they've got the good bit up front. Okay. And this is the other really, really key point. And this is why video just got so much more. But this was a really good point beforehand, but now it's so much more important because we are now even less reliant on face-to-face in-person meetings than we were. Already some bids you couldn't do that. And now more and more, the best you're going to have is a Zoom meeting to present your bid. You've just provided them with a customized, amazing sales asset. You've just sales enabled everybody in the room or everybody on the call or in the online meeting with an asset that they can then share in a digital way. They don't have to hand around bits of paper. They can just share it and share the key message. So when they say, we need, $3 million for this, you've given them the answer. You're not reliant on that person trying to retell your story because you're the expert at telling your story, not them. And so by giving them a customized video, this becomes your Trojan horse right into the heart of the organization to the decision maker. Or if the decision maker is on the call, you're still important because they probably will want to get opinions from other people who may not be in the room. Maybe they're even ill right at the moment with this virus, right? There's a good chance that as this thing really takes hold, that 20–30% of the people may not even be there. So it either gets postponed, or if it carry on, they may watch later on. So it just got even more important. So let's talk about the best place to use video. Now, early on, when you're trying to shape the influence, even if there's going to be an RFP, you've got a new solution. You may have a salesperson connecting with their opposite number in a company. And so using video, you're probably unlikely to use custom video early on in the cycle because it's expensive. However, there are ways you can use that, because if what you're selling is relatively similar into the same sort of industry vertical, then actually you can just tweak, just adjust, make the customized video and then adjust it a little bit for the next one and the next one and the next one. And so instead of making a custom video each time, you may only just change 10–20% of it. And now you've bothered to show up with a video that's customized to them. Now you're going to get their attention a lot more than if you just show another standard marketing video, or even worse, no video at all. And again, to bear in mind, this meeting may now be happening virtually. So anything you can give them that is digital rather than bits of paper or text is going to be far more engaging on their laptop and quick to watch than a whole bunch of text, which people don't like reading a lot of text on a screen. They would probably end up printing it out, and they don't want to print it out because they're at home and the printer may take ages and so on and so on. They don't want to read your 20-page document, but they might watch a 3-minute video. So it can then be used later on to shape the RFP. Now, normally, 2 months ago, I would have said that video at the RFP submission stage is a bit hit and miss. And usually, the best place for it is in an actual presentation. Now, if you're going to present on Zoom or something like this, I would still say that's true. Okay, because it's a little bit of theatre. You want to be able to, it opens that window of listening. And if there is no meeting in which to open a window of listening, then you've lost that use of the video. So as part of an RFP submission, you don't even know, did they watch the video at all? And if they did they watch it in the right order? They might have read the stuff and then watched the video, in which case the window of listening was out of order and so on. So, however, given the world we are now in, I would say that, and I've always said, if you can't present and the bid is big enough, it's still worth doing a customized video at the RFP submission stage, because you just want to throw everything at it because you want to win. So anything you can do to differentiate is vital. Now, I think that got even more important because it's all virtual at the moment. And until we can go back to physical meetings, then the more differentiated digital stuff, especially at this time, if you've bothered in this environment to make them a customized video, then I think that really sets you apart from everyone else. And that's what you're going to need to do, because I think everybody, let's be realistic, this year there are going to be a lot less bids. There's going to be a lot less RFPs because people are going to be postponing their projects. They're going to be saving their cash. So the bids that are out there, you're going to have to work twice as hard to win, and therefore be twice as differentiated, because everybody else is going to be on them like we've never seen before, because everybody's going to want to win. So there's going to be the same number of people fighting over who knows how many less RFPs. So anything you can do, the bid is large enough, anything you can do to differentiate is going to be worth doing at any stage. Just going to go through the process that we go through in terms of creating a video, which fleshes out why you would do, some of the choices you would make around making a video. So like any kind of good consultancy process, the first thing we do is focus on discovery. Like, who is it you're presenting to? What motivates them? Really, what's their problem? Because often, and I've heard this in APMP meetings, often, especially for those sort of mid-sized deals, you may not even have a relationship with them. They've just put out an RFP and said, this is what we want. They haven't really told you why they want that. And so anything you can do to demonstrate that you understand why, because either you know them, or at least you know the industry they're in, and you know what pressures they're under. If you can get down to that and demonstrate not just, yeah, we tick all the boxes, but actually, yeah, we understand why you want that, and of course we can provide that. And by the way, we're going to be ready to help you use that for the next stage 3, 4, and 5 down the road. And actually, we've helped other people to do that. If you can get to that business problem, not just the technological, technical problem that you're solving. Now, I mean, good exec summaries should do that anyway. But often, because of time pressures and so on, they often end up being, so people tell me, they often realistically end up being more of a kind of summary of all the technical options that you've given them in your RFP, or the boxes you've ticked, rather than focusing on that business problem. So when you make a video, it's all about storytelling. And so we want to get to the heart of what is the business problem. But it also could be, who are we presenting to? Is it a room full of white men? Is it, are there lots of different nationalities, genders, and so on represented? Because we better make sure that the people in the video reflect the audience and what they care about. Is this an organisation that really support people with disabilities? We better make sure we've got somebody in the video that maybe somebody's blind or something like, or using a screen reader or in a wheelchair. Those things are really important to people. We have sometimes, if you're pitching to somebody in the public sector, they may not let you use a video, but if they do let you use a video, one of the funny things we found is sometimes you've got to make it good, but not too good. They want a video, but they don't want it to look too flashy, too amazing, because otherwise you kind of fall foul of people say, oh, I see, that's why we're spending all this money. That's why you're so expensive. You've got a fancy video, or fancy this, that, or the other. Okay, so there are some ways around that as well. And a whole load of other questions. So we want to get all those questions out on the table, so that it's not about, let's just be clear, this is not about making fancy videos. We want to get a video that really resonates with the audience, that has a good story. It's all about the story, not about fancy graphics. In fact, to be often it's very, very simple graphics, as I showed earlier on. I don't want to oversell the kind of, let's make Star Wars 7, it's not about that, as we'll see. So you've got to differentiate, as we said before, and that often it's kind of sales 101 really, but so often when your team's in a bid situation, especially if it's a really big bid where lots of people are acting on it, you might have 20 people working on a really, really big bid, and it's so easy to end up talking about your stuff, not their stuff. And what we've got to do, as I'm sure you know in your heart of hearts, we've got to build a bridge between you and them, but we've got to start on their side and build it back to you. Okay, so the kind of far side of this bridge is all that business problem. And then when we get to the middle, then we can start talking about how our thing solves that problem. If we're going to tell a good story, roughly speaking, that's what we want to do. We want to focus on their problem first and then get back to talking about us, rather than we've done this, we can do that, we, I, who cares, right? And really helpful quote from How to Win Friends and Influence People, very famous book by Dale Carnegie. Remember that a person's name is to that person the sweetest and most important sound in any language. So if we can focus on them, shows them that we bothered, makes them sit up and listen straight away because you're talking about them. It's very flattering. Then we get on to how do we actually tell this story? And there's many ways you can tell your story, of course. There's as many ways as there are, writers and directors and so on. But two of the most popular, one of them I call the State of the Nation. And this is quite good if you're pitching to very senior people, and especially if you've got some kind of, big, fairly big deal. And the idea is that you talk about the world, not even them at this stage, the world that they're in, the pressures they're facing, and you could imagine at the moment that that's pretty easy for everyone. Right? Every company in the world, everything just changed, right? So you could talk about that situation, and then you could talk about how you understand how that situation has affected their business and what they're trying to do, and therefore you then talk about the specific RFP or the proposal you're putting forward or whatever it is. That may be the only bit they've shared with you if it's an RFP, but you're demonstrating you understand how that fits into their business and how their business fits into the world and how we've ended up here at this RFP. And so by talking about that, it's kind of the state of the nation, almost like the president talking about, the big picture of what's going on. It buys you the right to then talk about that second half of the bridge that we talked about. The other way is almost kind of the reverse of that. Rather than seeing the really big picture, we see the problem through the eyes of an individual. And this can be really helpful when, I don't know, you've got a situation, perhaps you're pitching more to technical people, or it's a bit more of a tactical solution rather than a rather than a large strategic solution. I mean, I think it's still used for that, but especially for that sort of mid-level tactical solution. So you say something along the lines of, here's Bob. Bob's having a bad day. His boss has asked him to pull together a number of, to organize the workforce. But the problem is all of the data that he needs to do that are in different silos. So when he's assigning tasks to people, often they go out in vans and they have the wrong materials, they have the wrong tools because they don't have good up-to-date information. And so when they get out on site, there's a lot of time wasted. There's, people arrive and the people they're trying to serve are out, or they can't fix the problem because it's been misdiagnosed and they've got the wrong tools. So in comes, your company, in comes our company, and we can, solve the problem by doing X, Y, and Z, and you can look forward to a brighter future, blah, 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 blah. Okay. So the point is we see it through Bob's eyes, and because we can relate to how Bob would feel, we feel the problem, we engage with the problem more emotionally rather than talking about it in abstract terms in the third person. And as I said before, a great script, a great story beats fancy graphics every time. And I often use the example, if you ever use the Internet Movie Database, imdb.com, you can look up what the top 10 films as voted by thousands and thousands of IMDb users are. And if you look in the top 10, The only non-violent film in the top 10, interestingly, is a film called 12 Angry Men, and it's a black and white film. It's Henry Fonda is the famous actor in it, and everybody else is reasonably not famous. In fact, some of the acting isn't even that good. But it's got a fantastic script, and it's just 12 people, a jury, in 12 men, because this is, you know, before perhaps women's lib, in America, black and white, deciding the fate of a young man. And it's brilliant. It's a really good film because it has a fantastic script. And it's voted, you know, one of the top 10 films of all time. Very cheap. It must have been very, very cheap to make. It's just almost all of it happens in one room. So, you know, one of the simplest sets ever. Then we get on with delivery. And again, by doing animation, it means that you can get back to working on your bid or proposal. And by the way, in this environment, it still means that we can, our team, who are also socially isolated, and in fact often have been socially isolated, they can all work on their parts all separately, and it can all be delivered digitally. The different component parts can be delivered around the world digitally, edited together and delivered digitally as well. So it can still go on even in the depths of all this pandemic. So we get on with writing, we'll come up with a script, agree that with you, and then we can get it voiced with professional voiceover typically. If it's animation, there'll be illustration and then animation. Let's fast forward to the point where you know, we're all back to normal, sort of, whatever that looks going to look like, where we could go out and film. And I've also put in sound and lighting. That's the thing people tend to forget. Now, for the moment, it could be. We'll get into why you would use, why you would want to do video. But if you did use video at home, there are some still things you can do to make your video look as good as possible. But I think at the moment, people are probably people's expectations just went way down. So if you had your CEO at home, you know, having recorded themselves on an iPhone, now that's probably okay. It will be for a few months, but once we're back to normal, that's not really acceptable. And I have heard of bids, not that we've done, but I did hear of one bid where they lost the bid, and one of the things that was mentioned is that one of their senior team took film on their iPhone, they included it in, and it was terrible. So you know, be careful doing, you know, poor quality video. As I say, at the moment, probably that's a little bit more acceptable than it was, but ultimately it won't be again. And ultimately, there's a bit of review process, and then we're done. So the most popular video styles, I'm quite a big fan of hand-drawn animation. And this could either be done like this, where it's done in a graphics tablet and done in the computer, but it's still hand-drawn. Hand-drawn animation is really good for very complex solutions, because it's almost like because it feels quite naive, quite childlike. Well, childlike's a bit strong, but it feels simple. So people are less intimidated by it. People kind of feel, oh yeah, I get it. Yeah, I get that. That doesn't, you know, I can relate to that. Rather than feeling like, oh, it all looks very flashy, looks very expensive. I don't really get it. Okay. I'm quite a big fan, and there are some examples I can send if anyone's interested. I'm quite a big fan. We've done lots of these where you actually draw on pieces of paper and you actually puppet the pieces of paper around that, you know, and you can do some fun things like have little doors that you open. There's lots of little tricks you can go and move. You build little bits of humor by the way you move the bits of paper around. So I'm not a huge fan of those kind of Doodly and other software packages. It just always feels a bit cheap when you do it using software kind of automated. And really it doesn't even really save much money, because the tricky bit is doing the thinking about the script and the voiceover and the editing and the design. So you don't really save a lot by doing that, and it just looks a bit cheap for me anyway. That maybe I'm you know, I'm a video guy, but you can also use, if you want a slightly more sort of slicker, more professional look, and you know, there's no right and wrong here. It's purely down to personal preference and what you think will resonate with your audience. Then you can do more what we call vector animation, and it has that look of what we might have called flash animation. It's not flash animation anymore, but it's what we used to call flash. You know, 5 years ago, you know, people had flash plugins, and you've got vector-based objects moving around in an animation. And you know, it's just a bit smoother, a little bit more corporate look to it. So that, you know, there's plenty of ways you can do that. This is from a motor show we did for IBM, and you notice that I put the subtitles at the top rather than the bottom, so that people can, you know, people always turn off the sound on when you're playing a video on a booth at a conference. So we put the subtitles at the top so that people could look over other people's heads. They could still see the subtitles and still hear what's going on, or rather see what was going on in the video rather than hear it. You can also create stock video, use stock video. Now that's really useful when you might, if what you're selling is a very physical product, you know, helicopters, say, or you know, something that's really tangible, physical, then stock video, or either bought off the internet or from your own library of pre-recorded footage, if you have that. You know, I say at the moment it might be quite tricky to go out and film things because it's not essential. I don't know what the rules are in Romania, but here you'd certainly have a big problem doing that at the moment, because people just wouldn't be allowed to do that at the moment. And that may well be the case for the next 3 to 6 months, who knows. So using stock footage is a great way of showing or implying that something is a physical solution. Now that may not be true, but psychologically, just by showing physical objects rather than animation, that can help people visualize what it is you're talking about. And it implies that it's a physical product rather than a theoretical product that you haven't yet made. Now, as I said, there are reasons why you would want to video people. Now, at the moment, this might just be simple iPhone footage because that's frankly all you can get, and I understand that. But let's forward wind or rewind to when, you know, we're free of this virus thing. The reasons why you might want to actually film people are, perhaps this is a really big deal, and you want to get somebody senior or even the leader of your company to comment on this deal. And they can't be there in person, but, you know, this deal is really important to us. You know, we'd love to partner with you, blah, blah, blah. That kind of input shows that you, I don't know how that translates, that you've got skin in the game. You know, this is really important to you as a company. The other reason is if people are going to be a big part of the solution that you're delivering. For example, an outsourced, you know, call center, or, you know, you want to show that these people aren't just resources in India. These are people who, they're real people with lives, they're happy, they've got a lovely working environment, etc., and they're going to work really hard for you. You know, and you take their welfare seriously, and you can communicate all that very quickly without actually saying it, just by showing them on video. I know that that's something we've done. We've incorporated video of call centers or other team members who would be part of the solution, because maybe it's a lot of consulting work's going to be part of the solution. You know, people are the product, in other words. And finally, delight. Now, this I'm going to include this, but this may or may not be as relevant, at least for the time being, because it's a physical product. And you know, let me take a step back. There are lots. We've done all this effort. What else can we do to delight them? Right now, there's only one way, but it's worth asking the question, like, what would the best company in the world do? It's a great question to ask. Now, if you, having made this video, there's a really good way to further reinforce and differentiate yourself. As I say, it'd be interesting to see how this works at the moment, but let's park that for the moment, and I'll show you anyway. So, I don't know if you've seen these. These are called video brochures, and they're often used to sell premium products. So if you go into a Bentley showroom, you might get one of these, or maybe you're interested in flying into space with Virgin Galactic, or I think this is for Hilton, High Flyer Rewards. And this is mine. This is my marketing material, and this. So these are, as you see, it's a brochure. So that when you open it, it plays a video, and it plays the video that you've created. Now, this could be used in this context. This would be the early on stage, the marketing stage potentially. Even could be used for people who don't even have a relationship with, and so this could be used even now because you're sending people's things because you can't go and visit them. But you can send a video, and rather than just sending it digitally, you send it in a way that's far more interesting. And this had a I decided for my marketing, at the end of the day, people are, corporate people get enough kind of corporate yada yada yada, and so I wanted to do something quite fun. People are people at the end of the day, and so I had a giraffe print around this box, and we did this whole jungle theme, and we had the silly giraffe with the sunglasses, how to stand out in the crowd. So I wanted something that really would stand out. It's bright yellow, and it's just fun. And we carried on the whole jungle theme. And this was not something that I posted online. This was, you'll see, this was to somebody I sent it to, and they said, look, we can't use you because we've got an internal team, but I love this so much. Can I post it on LinkedIn? So this is actually the photos that my prospect posted on LinkedIn, and actually generated me some really good leads with other people, because lots of people commented, which is lovely. Now, ironically, we'd run out. Normally, we give a lion chocolate bar because to keep with the jungle theme. But we'd run out, so we had to put a whisper and quickly change the text. So it's slightly unfortunate, but the point is, it's a bit of fun. We've got the jungle paper. It's something physical. People don't send out physical things anymore. And you'll see there it's slightly odd angle because of the, when you look at a screen from an angle, it's in negative. But you'll see from the bottom right there that I actually did a little bit of customization. So I might say, hi, Sharon, I'm Kevin from 7 Seconds to Win. So when they open it up, they actually hear their name being spoken. So even at that early stage where they haven't even, we haven't even necessarily started a relationship. This is really early on in the marketing phase, but you want to stand out, right? Because standing out just got more important. Then you can even do something like that. Now, how you would use these in a bid situation, what we'd recommend is that you show the video and then immediately you hand these out. And what that does, it's going to break up the meeting. Again, let's assume for a moment there is going to be a physical meeting. It breaks up the physical meeting. People are probably, if they haven't seen them before, and a good 80% of people I show these to haven't seen these, they're going to start, if they've got buttons, you can have button on, you're going to start fiddling with it. Oh, wow, this is cool. And to be honest, people usually say something along the lines of, oh, wow, because they don't know what it is you're handing them. They're not expecting it to be a video, and they're certainly not expecting it to be a video about them. And so now you just make it super easy for them to pass it on to somebody else within their company. Now, in this age of, or in this time of not being able to do anything physical, you could still potentially send these out to everybody involved. And obviously you say, obviously we've the person who sent this didn't have coronavirus, we've handled it very carefully and so on. People are still receiving mail, and that's not supposed to be a way that you can, very readily transmit this disease. So you could still send them potentially something along the lines of this, and it just further engages them emotionally. I just want to talk briefly about whether you use, if you've got an in-house team, why would you use an in-house team versus an agency? What's the benefit? So obviously, if you have an in-house creative team and they do video, often people say, oh, we have a marketing team. And if you do have a marketing team that produce video, obviously it may well be cheaper or free. And in this environment, you may be absolutely, it doesn't matter whether an agency is better, it doesn't matter, whatever. You've just got to save the money, right? It's a cost saving, and you've got to use that internal team, and I understand that. So that may well be everything else. I get that. Obviously, you've got more direct control over them because they're part of your team. At least they might be in another department, but they're sort of part of your team. I think the question I would often ask is that often these creative resources sit under a marketing function. And my experience, both having been in-house and agency, is that often marketing is set up to do marketing. They're not really set up for the other end of the sales process, which is the proposals, RFPs, and so on, which are often very, very fast response. It's all about good enough, and it's all about really, really, being very quick. And they're set up for planned campaigns, and you say, I need this in 3 days. What are you talking about? We don't just, they're just not set up for that. They're not very commercially minded because they don't need to be. They're all about crafting campaigns and so on. here you're much more in kind of event mentality. You're like the wedding photographer, having been a wedding photographer. It's now. You can't wait. You can't do a second take. This is it. We need it right now. Okay, so are they set up for that? And often, frankly, the answer is no. So just because it has video in the title, we do video. Just because it's got video in the title, it doesn't really mean they're set up for the kind of video that you mean. Okay, so just be careful that you're not comparing. You need to be comparing apples with apples. Are you really comparing the same thing? So the advantage of using an agency is that often they have the outsider's view. If you've got, often when I work with people, they use far too much jargon, they use acronyms and so on. And the way they explain, they say, oh, this is our unique selling point. And from an outsider's point of view, you can say, well, that doesn't sound very unique. That sounds like you've hit the Dilbert generator and kind of created a load of corporate speak, and it doesn't really sound very unique at all. And so what we tend to do is try and be the trusted friend that kind of goes until we get down to that, right, what is really unique here? And not just what's unique, but what's unique that will solve the customer's problem, right? Rather than what's unique, we're marvelous, okay? Because that isn't the same thing. We may well be able to bring a wider range of skills, if you need it translated into a specific language, or voiced in a different language, or you need a drone shot or video or something like that. If we need some specific skills to make this video that you don't have, it may be difficult for the in-house team, depending on how they're set up, to bring those in. And so by using an agency, they can just go and get all that and manage it for you. And again, there's going to be plenty of video. There's millions of video companies out there, production companies. And again, I think the thing I would argue is, have they done this before for bids and proposals on fast turnaround? Do they get it? Because often good enough is good enough. And you'd much rather have a video that's finished in 2 weeks than an amazing video that's in 4 weeks when you've only got 2 weeks. Okay, so is that agency set up for bids and proposals? So that's most of my content. I'm happy we've got a little bit of time for Q&A. Before I do that, I've got some resources that hopefully will be helpful to you. If you go to 7secondstowin.com/knowledge bank, or just go to 7 Seconds to Win, at the top there's a link to my knowledge bank, and I've got a whole load of little videos where I talk about loads of different aspects of using video in the pitch, the sales process, particularly pitch presentations and so on. I've also been interviewing people who've done large deals. I've postponed sending that out. I've got a podcast. I'm editing them, and I'm going to put them out soon. But I've postponed that just because I just don't think it's going to cut through at the moment. So I want to release those when people have got a little bit more time to kind of stop and think and listen. But that's been really amazing, listening to different very senior business people talking about how they approach deals, how they've used video and so on. So hopefully that will be useful in due course. And I'm also writing a book. Again, I may well postpone that a little bit, but I was going to launch in the summer, may postpone that a little bit to later in the year. We'll see how the year goes. But they're my details. Do feel free to connect with me if you haven't already on LinkedIn. Just to say as well, I'm actually offering, because everybody's getting onto Zoom and so on, I've run, before I was doing this video for bid stuff, I did a lot of virtual events and also video streaming for IBM, and have done for years. So a lot of this, a lot of the challenges people are facing with Zoom, I looked at doing on different other platforms 10, 15 years ago, so we solved some of those problems. How do you engage people in meetings online when you can't see them? I've been running some coaching sessions online, and they're advertised on LinkedIn. So if you go and check out my profile on LinkedIn, feel free to sign up to any of those classes. They're just half-hour classes looking at all sorts of different aspects of using Zoom, breakout rooms, security, and also how to use Zoom in your personal life, because a lot of us run or are part of groups. Maybe you're a scoutmaster and you run a church youth group, or you're part of a church and you want to, how do you do church online? There's all sorts of different how do I run my social club online? So I'll cover some of those things as well. How do I stream online? How to run webinars and so on. So Love to. That's all free, so it'd just be great to connect with you. Have a look on LinkedIn and sign up for one of those classes. I've posted about that. Just all you have to do is go on a post or comment, and I'm running a number of those over the next few days. Okay, that's me, Dan. I hope that's useful. It'd be great to open the floor out to any questions you have, either about the presentation or about the Zoom training.
Thank you, Kevin. That was lovely. That was great. Super timing. I'm sorry to say that because of the situation, but it's a good timing to be involved in developing people's way of communicating online and in virtual teams. That's a very strong asset right now. So thank you for the invite to participate in your webinars. I'm sure the people who've joined in will do that and follow you and learn more about that. And we do have a couple of questions in the chat box here.
Okay.
So if I may invite you to answer. The first two are from me.
Okay, right. Let me have a quick. Let me go back. I didn't see the chat, so let's just go back. Okay, so how do you start building a great scenario? I think the first thing is that the biggest thing actually is I go back to the idea of it's sales 101. It's talking about the customer and then telling a story. So it's talking about them, not you, because so often, and I do it as well. We all do it when it's our thing and we're in a hurry. We talk about us, and so the big words to avoid are I, we, our. If you're starting with those, you're probably doing it wrong. Okay, that would be the first thing. Talk about them. Tell a story about what problem you're solving, or what's the problem. Because if there's no problem, you can't solve it. If you start talking about your solution, but you haven't shown them that you really understand the problem, then you may well be solving the wrong problem. So that would be the key thing.
So basically, I mean, customer focus has always been one of our priorities in bid management, so we understand that. But in terms of actually structuring a scenario, how would so let's say we have a theme. How do we build around it so to envision a scenario? Because I personally haven't used video in proposal management. I think it has potential. But from identifying a pain point for the customer to transforming that into a scenario, that's quite a long way. So what's your
well, like I say, I mean, the two examples I gave, I try and pick the top one, or because you may be solving many problems, and the danger is that if you're selling them, I don't know, say they've asked for a piece of software and you're trying to sell them a piece of software, the danger is you start talking about all the functions of your software, right? And you're talking about something they don't care about. They don't care about all those things. They probably care about one or two things that your software does. So in terms of this video, you might want to get into that in the presentation, but in terms of this video, talk about the top 1, 2, or 3, most 3 problems that they face. And then talk about how your thing solves those 3 problems, and then shut up. Okay, you don't want to go and it can do this and it can do that, because no one cares. And just to give you an example, I've just been looking online at the hospital, almost like the field hospital, army hospital that they built to cope with all these coronavirus patients in London, at the Excel Centre in London. Usually, it's going to be 4,000 beds. So it reminds me of some sales training I attended where there's a company trying to sell a bed, a special type of bed, and it was twice as expensive as everybody else's hospital bed, but it did lots of clever things, and they couldn't sell it very effectively. And so the sales trainer goes in and spends a little bit of time listening. And the scenario, if you like, the pain, he establishes their big problem is that nurses are going off sick because they have to weigh the patients every shift, and it takes 2 people, and people end up with bad backs and so on, and they're going off. This bed weighs the patient at the touch of a button. That's one feature, because they were going in, the way they were selling it is going in and boring people with talking about all the 50 different features it had. They only needed to talk about one feature which solves their big problem, and they don't care about the other 49. This bed, and it's the only one on the market that does, weighs the patient every shift. So let's talk about that. So the problem is this, you know, we know you've got a problem where, you know, we're in a scenario, you know, the world where, you know, the number of nurses available is dramatically reduced, and the ones that you have are going off ill. So you paint a picture, you create a story around that, and then you talk about how this solves that problem.
Yeah. Okay, so basically focus on a pain point and build on it. Other questions we have, the tools people need to develop a video. Do you have any suggestion?
Well, it depends. If you're going to do animation, then something like After Effects. So our team use After Effects a lot. If it's more the kind of actual hand-drawn stuff, then that could either be hand-drawn using graphics tablet and any kind of graphics program, or it could just be, you know, a camera and, you know, over bits of paper. That's what we do a lot of. That's some of my favorite ones. And then just any editing softwares. I mean, it could even be as simple as Movie Maker, I suppose. I think the thing that I would caution is that you could spend an awful lot of time learning how to do that. And it, like anything else, why bother? Because you're not a video expert. Why not get a video expert to do it? That would be my advice. You know, if you got a bid that's worth including video in because it's decent sized video, why would you learn how to do video? You know, why that doesn't make sense to me. So I would get to, obviously I'd love it if you come and use us, but even if you don't use us, you use somebody else or an in-house team. I think that makes there's a lot more cost effective in terms of your time, rather than trying to mess about trying to learn how to use the tools. But yeah, I mean, there are plenty of tools out there that you can use.
Okay. Length of a video as a recommendation? Yeah,
that absolutely is. So for the kind of video that I'm talking about here, which is an opening video, not talking about a documentary, we're talking about 2.5 to 3 minutes absolute maximum. That is quite a long time. And the danger is that if it goes over that, you're starting to get into that detail, you're getting beyond your 3 pain points and you're starting to get into the technical detail of your solution. That is not what this video is designed to do. And so that's a big red flag. Now, we have made videos longer than that, but we usually advise people we wouldn't do that, but you know, ultimately we'll make what the customer wants. But it always does concern me when it's getting more than that. You should be able to tell your story in 2.5 to 3 minutes. And if it's more than that, you're telling a story that's too complex. Now, in this scenario where everything's digital and you're not even in the meeting, perhaps, or maybe you don't even get to present, it could be that you show them one video which whets their appetite, you know, teases them and gets them interested, and then there could be a much longer, there could be other assets. For example, you could have a technical expert talking through why this is a really great solution for them, and it's much more kind of off the cuff. It's not particularly edited even. It could just be somebody talking and it's an additional video, and it's 20 minutes long, but it's like the world expert on something. Now that kind of video, that's fine. Just don't make that the first video they watch. You want something that's going to emotionally engage them. And then when they've listened to that and now they're really interested, they're excited, then you can give them access to something else that's longer. You know, people will watch feature films if they really believe that they need the content, they'll listen to a 20-minute video. But if they don't know that yet, the danger is that's just really boring and they won't even watch it.
Yeah, I agree.
Should you have multiple videos? You could. The reality says that it's hard enough to get people to spend money on one video, never mind making multiple videos. I think what you can do is you could amend what I have seen people. I mean, I would love it, of course, if people, you know, have a customized video for every section and they come to us and we make 5 different videos. I'd love that, of course. So it'd be wonderful. And I think it would be somewhat effective. But I think in terms of, I always try and make sure that we're cost effective for our clients. What I have seen done is use a video at the RFP stage And then there may be some interaction with the client, some feedback on that solution before they get to present. And then the video you show at the presentation is the same video, but now you've changed it quickly based on the feedback. And the fact that you've changed it quickly, again, says to them that you're responsive, that you really want this, and so on. So I have seen that done. We have done that well, once or twice. Yeah, I think I covered what's the optimal moment of having the presentation. So in the presentation, I would say the optimal moment is at the start. And the reason for that is because I don't know if there's a really good book. If you haven't read it, I thoroughly recommend it, called The Chimp Paradox. And it is basically psychology, modern psychology science for non-psychologists. It's not a sales book, but it's quite an interesting. I mean, I find it personally quite helpful to understand myself and other people. It's an interesting book, and he really talks about the thing that we all know or have heard of, that people buy emotionally and then rationalize logically. They don't buy logically and then rationalize emotionally. Yeah. So the idea is that if you can engage people emotionally at the start of your presentation, then they will tend to give extra emphasis to the good parts of your presentation, the things that they agree with, and they will tend to downplay the things that they disagree with. Oh, that will be fine. I'm sure that'll be fine, subconsciously, because they've kind of decided they like you already. So anything you can do at the start of the presentation to enhance that effect, to make them, to engage them emotionally, is going to work well for that whole presentation. If you only do that halfway through the presentation, or even worse, at the end, then you totally lose that effect. And that is the other really good reason for using these video brochures at the start, because you've shown the video, it's about them, there's a bit of flattery there, there's music, you're engaging them emotionally. Then you hand out, and you differentiate each other, then you hand out the video brochure. And now you're engaging them even more, and they start fiddling with it. It's a physical thing that they can touch. You're engaging them even more. You don't wait till the end. You don't wait till the end for a leave behind. You hand it out early to get this engagement. Okay. Can we look at the video pictures of video production of the exec summary? Yes, as long as you've done the exec. It is, in a sense, yes, as long as you've done that exec summary telling a proper business story, and not just have that exec summary as kind of the technical summary of all the technical blah blah tick boxes that you've put in their response to the RFP, which frankly, from the feedback I've had from APMP members over the years, that often is what it is, if we're honest, not an attempt to really understand the underlying business problem that's caused this RFP to come about. Okay, so if you've done that, then yes, it is. Oh yeah, somebody's commenting on the Chimp Paradox, agreeing with me it's a great book. So yeah, that's well worth the read. I think most people see the other people I've spoken to kind of stop halfway through. Because even if you stop halfway through, it's still a great book. So there's a lot of good stuff at the front. It kind of gets a little bit heavy as you go on, but certainly the first half is brilliant. So well worth the read.
All right, so we're 5 minutes over our deadline, so our timing here. I'm sure the team has a lot more questions, but if there's anything, they can reach you on LinkedIn. So thank you for making yourself available.
You're very welcome.
It's been a great webinar, and thanks to APMP Romania. And feel free to reach us on LinkedIn, post, follow, volunteer, and so on. And I'll leave you to it. I guess we're done here. Have a nice evening ahead.
Well,
and we'll be in touch. Thank you, Kevin, very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you.